Hello Chassos, welcome to another video where we're going to be talking about the tower reveals for 10th. Now, I really wanted to get a video out sooner, but me and the wife bought a little boy, so the puppy has been keeping us very busy, and as you can hear from my voice, Papa Nurgle decided to stick his finger down my throat. So I haven't really been in a place where I've been able to talk to the camera and really do what I wanted to. But at the moment, I'm riding that kind of sexy, sick voice. So I figured I'd get the maximum benefit out of it and just, kind of talk about the tower reveals. It also kind of worked out a little bit because I've never been the sort of person that wants to read something and react to it straight away. I am not a reactionary channel, as a lot of you would have picked up. And that is usually to my benefit. Because it allows you to kind of mull over things, really decide what you think or feel about something, and then express your opinion. And that then equates to, for me, tournament results, which is great. Now, you'll also notice I'm all, like, rugged up in my robe. I had all of this stuff bouncing around in my head, and like any genius, I had it all come to me at 2 a.m. and got hit with a spark of inspiration. And unfortunately, inspiration can come and go for me. So I kind of needed to just grab the bull by the horns. It's like 6 degrees Celsius outside. We are in the depth of winter, so it is cold as fuck here. Anyway, all that out of the way, let's talk about the 10th reveals, because honestly, having looked at the Tau Reddit and Facebook, and even just my own Discord, responding to all of this with a resounding meh. Let's talk about it. Alright, so let's talk about some of the reveals. And there's one thing in particular that I will, I guess, elaborate on more, talk about why I genuinely think, after thinking about this for a little bit, I think our army is going to be cracked from the start of 10th. I really think that Tau is going to be very strong. And there's a couple of reasons for that. I'm not saying any of this with insider information, but I am saying this from a point of logic that I've gone from piece to piece. And allow me to express all of that to you. And let's start with everything that we've been shown. Now, if you follow everything that they gave us in the spotlight, and if you haven't seen it, there'll be a link down in the description. I'll go through at a basic level what we're getting. I won't do like an in-depth run through because I feel like there's a billion people that have already done that already. And I would rather give my line of logic, spend time talking about that, and also do this from the perspective of a high-end player, not as a content mill channel sort of thing. So let's do that. So first and foremost, the overview for the greater good is basically the replacement for Markalites. This is an army-wide rule, and it means that we buddy up. So a unit can spot for another unit, called an observer, and when a guided unit shoots at a unit which is being observed by that other unit, you get +1 ballistic skill, and if they have the Markalite keyword, you get ignore cover. If a guided unit shoots at a unit that they are not being guided onto, they get a -1 ballistic skill. First and foremost, that fucking sucks. I really hope that line gets deleted. It is fucking stupid. We do not need that. We do not need to be punished for splitting fire. We are already hitting on 4s on most of the stuff so far as we know. I will be actually shocked. I will be battle shocked if our crisis suits are hitting on 3s natively. So first and foremost, this rule will actually be very good, and I'll go through that in a little bit. Let's continue with the overview. Kaoyun is now a detachment rule. This feels kind of bad because flexibility of being able to go Montcar or Kaoyun was kind of really nice. Really nice. It gave us a lot of flexibility depending on the matchup. It being a detachment rule, I don't really like it, honestly. Now, all of this, what I'm saying is in a vacuum. We haven't seen the entirety of the index, and I am withholding judgment until I see everything. But I also don't like that they've kept the from the third battle round onwards sort of shtick. I don't like army rules that you get for half of the game. And particularly for this one, the early rounds, especially against certain armies or against really good players, are some of the most important rounds that you can play on. Like giving up the board, giving up 2 turns of the board to wait for your army rule to come online, kind of fucking sucks. And, you look at like the Space Marine rule that got released, every round they get to go, okay, cool, 1 unit, bang, rerolls, hits and wounds. And I don't know that sustained hits 1 into sustained hits 2 for guided. I don't know if that's powerful enough to really compete with that. But again, we're saying all of this in a vacuum. So there may be that there are things that we can layer that just make this really competitive or really cracked. But generally speaking, I don't like giving up that much pressure unless, how strong we were with Sunshot Bombers and everything else. We had things to mitigate that early pressure, and then we were able to take the board and kill everything and do whatever else. Anyway, so Callion's a detachment. We will likely see Montcar as a detachment. We saw a Pathfinder team. This doesn't surprise me in the least. They have been, throughout this article, talking about the new changes, and this very much fits into it. I feel like Pathfinders were shown here because they fit directly into the change to our Marker Light system. The big things here, going from a 5-up save to a 4-up save, meh. All of their heavy weapons going to 5s. Everybody's been talking about, they can get to 3s with, the +1 to hit from the heavy rule and the +1 ballistic skill, whatever. You are not going to be investing another unit into this. I don't think you're going to see ion rifles or rail rifles anymore. I really don't. Before you took it because they weren't really punished for having it. Starting on a ballistic skill of 5, Pathfinders should never be stationary. That's not what they do. But they do have a couple of other good tricks. So even though the heavy weapons I don't think will be that prominent, that's okay because they've still got the scout rule. They can be observers twice, but they must target a different unit each time they do. So that's very, very powerful that they can provide that sort of fire support. The 2 drones are a little bit different. -2 to charge. The grav inhibitor drone is the only one who hasn't changed. Pulse accelerator rather than additional minus AP. That gets us 6-inch to our guns, which, meh. But the big one, recon drone, not the burst cannon, because that's just on 5s, who gives a shit. Bearer has the infiltrator's ability, which is a forward deploy, which on Pathfinders could be really, really good for getting angles. And I will also elaborate more on this, why I think the greater good rule is going to be cracked. Drones are no longer drones. They're war gear. They are just little tokens that sit on your thing. We have to see how this is going to be implemented because before we used to being able to stack a bunch of drones on them and each unit can take certain types of drones but others can't, like the Guardian drone, for example, you'd see on Fire Warriors but you couldn't take on Crisis Suits. This one, I mean, -1 to wound, depending on what this can be taken on, will be very, very powerful. Gun drones are dog shit. Marker drones, they have the marker-like keyword and can act as observers even if they advance. This has the implication that advancing will stop your eligibility to shoot because that in the wording is a unit that is eligible to shoot can blah, blah, blah. We don't know yet how this is going to interact with the assault rule because assault allows you to shoot even if you advance. I assume it gets past that, but if you don't have assault weapons in the unit, then you take a marker drone so you can still do it. Also, getting the marker-like keyword means that you're guiding another unit, being a spotter for them, gives them ignore cover. Missile drone, meh. They're exactly the same as they were before. Shield drone +1 to wound. This is just strictly worse than what we had with shield drones before. Kind of sucks, but in a way, my take from this, and I'll spend a little bit of time on this one, the drone change, while it sucks and it hurts us a little bit, that is in a world in 9th where we were balanced around being able to take all of these drones and having these extra wounds that were attached to all of our units, and that also interacted with like targeting and whatever else and having invuln saves on them and blah, 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 blah. And to be honest, shield drones were aggressively costed because of that. Hopefully, This change allows GW to put better points costs on everything else of ours, or maybe change some of the ways that we interact with damage so that we're not the glass cannon that we were. It would be really, really good if we had some more ways to be defensive. I know people hated drones, but at the same time, if we didn't have drones, we fell over to a sneeze. Even, like crisis suits and that sort of shit just would not stand up to anything. So hopefully we see some sort of compensation for this. This is strictly just a nerf, though. Like 100%, this is just strictly a nerf. With an asterisk, depending on what drones can be taken on what units, and if there's any other things around that. Safety protocols with this seems to be dead, but we may also get a strat where, or like, another part of a datasheet or whatever, where you can remove a drone war gear, you lose the keyword that it gave you, but you completely negate an attack. I don't know, maybe. Anyway, Weapon Spotlight Railgun, this is exactly the same as it was, but the mortal wounds got moved onto devastating wounds on a wound roll, and it doesn't ignore invuln saves. Though, having said that, this is just the stat line that we're seeing. You'll notice this is just a section cut out of a datasheet. We haven't seen the Hammerhead platform. We haven't seen the Storm Surge platform. This is literally just the weapon. Heavy... Your hammerheads really aren't going to be moving. Most of the time, my hammerheads are in a position where they can't be shot, and then I unmask them to shoot at whatever I want to. So heavy, you're probably going to be on 4s. If you've got guiding, which you may actually want to do, then they'll be on 3s, which is kind of nice. You can get that, relatively easily. Little asterisks again, depending on how you play. But the railgun is exactly the same, though we lost a pip of AP that, honestly, AP6 to AP5 doesn't really make a difference. There is nothing that's going to be getting a save with that, with the exception of, like, Termies with Storm Shields and cover, but we're assuming that they're the exact same thing, and even then they're probably going to have an invuln save if they've got that. So, Pulse Blast Cannon is basically the exact same, just with strength differentials, and that's also the thing with the Railgun. The strength's gone up just sort of to factor in for the toughness changes that came through with vehicles and whatever else. And then Combat Embarkation is a stratagem where you can get back into a transport when somebody declares a charge against you, but you have to be within 3 inches of that transport anyway. In my opinion, this is kind of like yeah, it might get some use, but it's very niche. It's very, very, very situational when you would need this. And that's a reveal. Now, I know what you're thinking, probably right now. Jay, at the start of this video, you said that an army's going to be cracked. What the fuck, man? Nothing that was in there really, got me hard. And I get that. I can see where you'd go there, but let me walk you through my line of logic. The first and foremost is that most of this reveal was actually themed. Most of this reveal covered 2 things. 1, the change to the For the Greater Good rule. First and foremost, that is the big sort of theme that's around this. With this and the Pathfinders, and in a weird way also the Kaoyun detachment rule. Given that, we're looking at this and you're like, okay, I'm hitting better and I'm getting explodes and I'm getting whatever. The Kaoyun rule also feeding into some of the vehicle changes, and obviously the drone one was a big one, so it highlighted sort of the 2 major changes to our army. Drones and the other rule. The other thing was that because vehicles have been getting a big spotlight with toughness changes, we showed the 2 big anti-vehicle things. But realistically speaking, they didn't show us much aside from the 2 big changes. And because they were themed around that, I get the sneaking suspicion that they didn't show us anything which is actually good, which is actually cool. Now, there are 2 lines of thought that can go from here. 1, they showed us things. 1, because I think GW knows where Tau sits in community perception. And this, the drone changes, was good for Tau players to know, but also was a community ploy. Nobody who plays against Tau likes drones. So, showing them that it's going to war gear is a way to get the community hyped about 10th, because the annoying, abrasive boogeyman of Tau that can kill you at range and then having a billion drones is going away. Secondly, I think you can either extrapolate that there is nothing else cool going on with their army, which I highly doubt, or the other option, which is where my brain's going, is that after the backlash and the community uproar that they got when they revealed the Hammerhead, if you remember when our 9th book came out, the doomsaying and carrying on that happened when they showed off the railgun, which them including it here was kind of a nod to that. But missing the ignore invulns and the mortal wounds means that this isn't actually as scary as people thought it was when it was released then. But they didn't really give us anything all that cracked. People won't find out what's in the Tau book until it's out, which means that this releasing all of this information won't affect their sales. It'll get people hyped, which is the point of these reveals, by the way. But that means that we've got a lot of good stuff coming. And my brain centers onto the army rule, which let's have a think about this for a little bit. The greater good rule does not stop the unit that is guiding somebody else, it's acting as a spotter, it doesn't stop them from shooting themselves. It just allows them to put it onto it. Now let's talk in terms of a game, like actual competitive game where you are moment to moment. Your main source of marker-lights are marker drones, or having a unit of Pathfinders, or, some of the Chads were rocking Tetras. But generally speaking, those things were the first to die. They would die very, 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 very quickly. And if you weren't running a Tau step list that had long strike, that was generally just, okay, your marker lights are gone. In a world where we had Sunshark bombers, they brought their own marker light support, which was great. But for the later part, usually if you were taking Cow unit, it was offset by those marker drones being dead, but you got exploding sixes. So it kind of worked out mathematically to be about the same. Maybe a little worse, but whatever. If you were going Montcar, you had the marker lights for exactly when you needed it, and by the time you got to turns 3, 4, and 5, everything was dead. Now, when I look at this, and I think about it in terms of what was winning me the game, or keeping me in the game later on, from turn, say, 3 onwards, it was commanders, and it was whatever was left alive. Now, if I think about, before I had the reroll ones from the Commander Aura, which we don't know if we've got or not yet. We haven't seen any of the Commander sheets, and that will kind of be the big one. Looking at what the Commander sheets look like is going to be the enormous thing that is going to tell us what our army is going to look like. Commanders have always been our premier data sheet. They have been our best unit by far for the entire edition. And so knowing what they've got is going to be the big thing. But I assume that our commanders are still going to be hitting on 2s. They are still going to be rocking a bunch of guns. They are going to be able to take enhancements, and they are going to be able to enhance units around them in some way or another. Now, if you've got a unit that is hitting on 2s, walking with, let's say, a crisis unit, that unit says, all right, I'm going to guide you on. So I, who do not need to be guided because I'm hitting on 2s, and let's say it's Cold Start, and they retain their target lock to ignore cover built in, or whatever the new name is in 10th. Let's assume they've got that, or even that they just don't care about the enemy's cover. They then go, cool, I'll guide you on. That crisis unit gets to hit on 3s, or if we've got other ways to get +1 to hit, because ballistic skill modifiers and hit modifiers are different. If you remember from the precedent set by the out of line of sight changes, which I believe still exist in this, I have to check the exact wording on that, but in 9th, the out of line of sight change was that you worsened your ballistic skill, which means that if you were firing over dents, you were firing at like Harlequins or Eldari with lightning fast, for example, you could get a -2 because it's -1 to your ballistic skill and then -1 to hit. Conversely, because this rule specifies, and this is another thing that jumps out to me, it doesn't say +1 to hit. It improves your ballistic skill. If we have other ways to give them +1 to hit, which we might, then we could have crisis suits hitting on 2s. And on top of that, they're rolling around with the commander, giving him lookout, sir, or whatever the new rule is if we have a commander in the unit or whatever, I don't know. But if you have a commander who can't be shot at and can't be interacted with, guiding them on so the crisis suits are hitting on 3s, and it's not like the marker drones are just going to get easily plinked off, because previously, when a crisis unit got shot at, you had to really decide where you were putting your wounds, because as soon as something starts taking wounds in a phase, or it takes damage, you must keep allocating to it until it dies. Which meant that you didn't want to allocate to a crisis suit, because if they've shot some incidental fire at you, okay, whatever, the crisis suit takes 1 wound, he's down to 3. All right, and then I'm going to hit you with a big plasma gun, and that's 3 wounds. Crisis suit instantly dead. You can't pass it off onto a drone unless you save your protocols, but even then, that's only 1 shot. And so it meant that you were incentivized to send it on the drones first. Marker drones were generally always the first to die, because mortal wound protection was another reason that I loved taking shield and marker drones. But marker drones would always take it first, because the shield drones have an invuln save. The marker drones didn't, they just had an armor save. So, marker drones were generally always dead. And so turn 3, 4, and 5, it was very rare that I had marker lights still available unless I was having the most conservative game of my life. But now, for 5 turns, as long as that commander and crisis unit lives, that commander goes, cool, hey, those guys over there, fucking kill them. Dead, do it. And the crisis unit obeys, and they get 3s. And then the commander afterwards is like, oh, by the way, I have guns too. So this rule, I think, is going to be very, 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 very good. And if you take a marker drone on a commander, for example, let's scroll back down to that, because commanders were absolutely allowed to take shield drones and marker drones in the last edition, that commander then gets the marker light keyword and can advance and do it, which with assault weapons he might have been able to anyway. But the marker light keyword then goes, hey, shoot those guys over there, you get a +1 ballistic skill, and you also ignore cover, just because he's rolling with them. And he is hard to remove with Lookout Sir still in the game. There were very few games where somebody would remove a commander that I wasn't already aware that I was likely throwing away to achieve some other objective. And that was kind of the mark of a lot of good Tau players, being able to protect your commanders as long as you need it. So when I look at that, and when I start thinking about this in terms of an actual competitive game, even though I have so few details right now, I think the stuff that we've been shown is either necessary to explain and show the value of our new rule, like Pathfinder's being able to give it out twice and whatever else, or it was just stuff that's not really offensive to the community and is going to get people hyped for 10th, because I can't tell you the number of people I've been seeing in forums being like, yes, drones are dead, nobody's going to be taking them anymore, Tau is going to, they're not the boogeyman anymore. I hate to fucking tell you, man, I think they're going to be the boogeyman. I think this is going to be a very, very fun edition. Anyway, let me know what you think down in the comments. I really am getting a little bit excited. And, it stands out to me that I picked up this model when I was coming in. Late at night. You'll recognize my shadow sun. I can't get it to focus, but this was actually the model I held up when I made one of my first videos. Actually, to this day, one of my best performing videos as well. And that I'm actually as excited for the new edition, seeing this sort of stuff. After mulling it over, when I first read it, I was very underwhelmed. Very, very underwhelmed. And then certain bits started to click into place for me. Certain bits started to really hammer home the practical applications of them. Not just stuff on paper. Because everybody's talking about hammerhead shots. Oh, you hit a 6, you get 3 of them. If they're getting, somebody supporting them with the marker light keyword. Man, I don't give a fuck. That happens 1 in 6 times per platform. That is nothing that you build a game plan around. But a commander rolling around with a death ball? Holy fuck yeah. I could get behind that as a game plan. That is definitely something that we do because we were already doing it. I really hope with any other reveals that Tau keeps their speed and their playstyle that they found in 9th, because castling was even more obnoxious for our opponents. You wouldn't alpha strike as easily as we do now, but that's going to happen anyway. That's, and honestly, and please nobody take offense to this, but that is a skill gap for somebody going against a Tau army, not really knowing what they're doing or not knowing how to counterplay them. Good players know how to get in Tau's face and stop them from just running the board. Don't get me wrong, you can still alpha strike the fuck out of people and that can still feel bad. But I'm really hoping we maintain the parts of our playstyle that made them fun to play and not just sit there in the back of a castle and do nothing for 3 turns. But anyway, thank you very much to my patrons who make all of my videos possible and who are going to be getting the best of me as we get up to 10th and through the release and all of the lists that I build and everything else. If you would like to join them, you would like to be there first and get access to our Discord, head down to the link in the description and join us at the Pantheon. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.